Hi, I'm here with John F. Kennedy to talk about how he created the domino theory with Dwight D. Eisenhower to contain communism. So, John, how do you feel about the domino theory?
I was convinced that if South Vietnam fell to communism, then other states in the region would as a consequence.
I understand you had a lot of daily contact with the Hawks in Washington, D.C. What did they believe in?
They believed that American forces would be far better equipped and prepared for conflict in Vietnam than the French had been.
The Hawks in particular were strong supporters of the domino theory. Is that correct?
Yes, that is.
So, Kennedy, what did you agree to in 1961?
I agreed to finance an increase in the size of the South Vietnamese army.
During your presidency, the Strategic Hamlet Program was introduced. How did that go?
This failed badly and almost certainly drove a number of South Vietnamese peasants into supporting the North Vietnamese communists. The Strategic Hamlet destroyed decades, if not hundreds of years of village life in the South.
This is the handkerchief Kennedy used during Vietnam.
This is the food that they sent to the soldiers.
So, in 1962, how many advisors were there in South Vietnam?
About 12,000.
So, as well as sending more advisors to South Vietnam, you also sent 300 helicopters with U.S. pilots.
Yes, that's correct.
Right now we are on site at one of the places that the Vietnamese fought.
Lyndon B. Johnson was born August 27, 1908. Lyndon B. Johnson was president of the United States during the Vietnamese War.
Lyndon B. Johnson was president from November 22nd, 1963 to January 20th, 1969. After Kennedy's assassination, he was left with the battle plan for the Vietnam War. Lyndon B. Johnson then just left off of where Kennedy left off with his plan and continued from there. It was a success for the Vietnam War.
Johnson increased the number of U.S. troops deployed to Vietnam.
By the end of his second term as president, there was the end to the Vietnam War.
Lyndon B. Johnson was so committed to winning the Vietnam War. Lyndon B. Johnson was very aware that full U.S. military involvement might have been a negative impact on his chances of winning the 1964 election. Johnson always strongly defended the use of the American troops in Vietnam.
Just days before Johnson was elected, the U.S. Air Base at Bien Hoa was attacked by communist guerrillas, killing 4 Americans.
Right now we're at the gravesite of William Westmoreland.
In late 1967, Viet Cong began striking out the U.S. Responding in force, Westmoreland won a series of fights such as the Battle of Darktown.
Victorious. U.S. forces inflicted heavy casualties, leading Westmoreland to inform President Lyndon Johnson that the end of the war was in sight. In June 1964, he became the Deputy Commander of Military Assistance Command for Vietnam. There he assumed direct control from General Paul D. Harkins.
As the head of the MACV, he was known for highly publicized positive assessments of U.S. military prospects in Vietnam. Responding to the offensive, Westmoreland led a successful campaign which defeated the Viet Cong.
In June 1968, Westmoreland was replaced by General Creighton Abrams. Returning home, Westmoreland was criticized as the general who won every battle until he lost war. Assigned as Army Chief of Staff, Westmoreland continued to oversee the war from afar.
On April 28, 1967, Westmoreland addressed a joint session of Congress.
Westmoreland believed that the Viet Cong could be defeated through larger scale use of artillery, air power, and large unit battles.
However, as time went on, the strengthening of the Communist combat forces in the South led to regular requests for increases of the U.S. troops' strengths. From 16,000 when he arrived to its peak of 535,000 in 1968, when he was promoted to Army Chief of Staff. This was William Westmoreland's military hat.
This was the present that William Westmoreland's friend gave him to hold his gun.
And this is Nixon's presidency badge.
Under the provisions of the Vietnamization, South Vietnamese forces would be built so that they can assume more responsibility for the war.
North Vietnam had its own plans. It prepared for a general offensive in 1972, time to put pressure on the Nixon administration to settle the war on Hanoi's terms prior to the presidential elections.
Nixon created a policy for Vietnamization.
In April 1970, he expanded the war by ordering the U.S. and South Vietnamese troops to attack communist sanitaries in Cambodia.
The Vietnam policy failed. Nixon announced the withdrawal of 500,000 troops, and by May 1972, no American forces were on the combat mission.
In 1972, the North Vietnamese launched a massive invasion of South Vietnam, although Nixon did continue to decrease American troop strength.
The key problem for his presidency would clearly be the Vietnam War.
The Vietnam policy failed.
And this is a list of 25,000 soldiers that were in the Vietnam War.
Nixon ordered the withdrawal of 60,000 troops.